Okay, let's move into the next part where we're going to look at the parent function of exponential functions. And in this case, we're going to look at exponential growth functions. Notice that the function as we go from left to right is increasing, so it's a growth function. And there's 3 points that are really critical whenever we're looking at these types of functions. Of course, the first one is located right there at 0, 1. So notice for the 0.01 is where it actually grows there. So that's the first part that we kind of think about. And then notice here, another point is 1 comma b. So when x is 1, y is b. B is whatever that base is. Whenever x is -1, y is 1 over b. So we can see that because if I put a negative there, that's going to flip that to the denominator. And we've got that one graph. So we have those 3 points that we take a look at in this particular place. And that's going to be always common whenever we're looking at those different values there. So we can see all of that stuff there. Okay, so if we go back over to the screen, we can see some information here. Of course, here we have it minus, of course, my parentheses, which I probably should have thrown in there. Let me get that in there as we go through it. And so we have that parentheses over here. Of course, it's describing a point, x and a y value. So 1 comma b, here is my x value, my y value, my x value, and my y value in that particular case. So we've got that one. And so we've got all of these things here that we can see in terms of the graph. So what are we going to do? We want to figure out what is the domain and range. What is the y-intercept? What is the asymptote? What is the beginning and end behavior of all these particular functions? So going back over here, we're going to take a look at all that stuff. So notice that the domain is from -infinity, which is all the way down here on the x, to positive infinity. So we can see from -infinity to positive infinity. That's the domain. The range runs from, notice my asymptote is at 0. So it goes from 0 up. So it goes from 0 all the way up to positive infinity. So that's my range. The asymptote is the x-axis, which is this y equals 0 line right here. And then my intercept is located, of course, at 0, 1. So that's the only intercept that we have there. And then is there any symmetry? No. So we can't see any kind of point symmetry, line symmetry, vertical line symmetry, anything like that. And then my extrema, there are none. Notice that it's constantly decreasing as we go this way, and it's constantly increasing as we go this way. So it's always increasing as we go from left to right. Okay, so coming back over to the screen here. So we're going to take a look at this function, see what happens. So we have 1.5 to the x. Now, how do I know that's growth? That's growth because this number is greater than 1, if you recall. When this number is greater than 1, it is considered a growth function. When it is when it's a fraction in between 0 and 1, it's considered a decaying function or a decay function. Okay, so then we take a look at this. So what is my domain and range? My domain and range, my domain would be that x runs from -infinity all the way up to positive infinity. My range, again, starts at 0. And then my y value, and it never hits 0, goes up to positive infinity. It takes care of the domain and range. The y-intercept is still going to be 0, 1. Okay, and we can see that very easily. So when x is 0, if I plug a 0 into here, I get anything to the 0 power is always 1. So 0, 1 would be my intercept, and in this case it would be my y-intercept. And how do I know it's a y-intercept? Because x is 0. The asymptote would be the x-axis. So that is where y is equal to 0. And then my beginning and end behavior, we can see what's happening based on the domain and range. So as x goes to -infinity, y goes to 0. As x goes to positive infinity, y goes to positive infinity. So there's my beginning behavior. There's my end behavior. So we can see that on that. And so we want to graph that one. So 3/2. So to graph it, I would put that here. I know for sure that it crosses at 0, 1. So I know that that's one of the points on the graph. when x is 1. So if I were to plug a 1 in here, that's 3/2. That would be 1.5. When x is -1, when this is a -1 here, this flips and becomes 2/3. So it'd be probably right about there. So we can kind of see what that graph is doing, and then it comes up and then heads up that way. And of course, this is heading towards 0. I kind of have a flat line there, but it actually should be going down slightly. Okay, so that's what it looks like when we graph one of those particular functions. Now we want to graph this one. Now there's some shifts that go on here. This -5, this -1 gives us some information that we've learned before when we were doing parabolas. And so with the -5, what does that tell me? That tells me that everything goes down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is going to be my asymptote. Okay, so that's what the -5 tells me. So this is that y equals -5 line. That's going to be the asymptote. And so this -1 tells me that everything shifts over to the right 1, because remember, it shifts in the opposite direction. So x -1 causes it to shift to the right. So that means instead of hitting where normally it would, notice this point right up here, which is, of course, 0, 1, which is the initial point for the parent function, that's going to go down 5. So it's going to go, instead of being at 0, 1, it's going down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can see it comes down to here, and then it shifts to the right 1. So it's going to be right here. Okay, and now we can start plugging in other things. Now, what's my parent function for this particular one? My parent function is y equals 4 to the x. So based on that, I can figure out all my other points, because that 4 is that base. So when x is 1, remember that y is b. When x is -1, y is 1 over b. Okay, so when x is 1, my y value is 4. So when x is 1, it would normally be up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's going to shift down 5. And so plus it's shifting over to 2, so it's going to actually move over here. And it's going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to go down to right here. Okay, remember that it is 4 units up from the asymptote. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then of course, so that would be one of the points. So we know that at 2, in this particular case, 2, -1, right? Because it's going up 4 there. And then we know that at 0, which is 1 to the left, it's going to go down to 1/4. So if we go to the left 1, it's going to go 1/4 above that line. So at 1/4 above that line is going to be approximately right there. Notice it's actually going up much faster, so it's going to hit that curve and then head straight up. So that's what it's going to look like. Okay, so that'll take care of some of the graphing, as we can see how things shift around, and we'll go to the next video after this to do a little bit more graphing and understanding how these things shift around.